And before we get going, here's a word about our sponsors. SDHQ Motorsports is a powerhouse 30,000 square foot facility with 45 family members reporting for duty. This single owner, single location business is based out of Gilbert, Arizona. It can handle anything from a hot rod, daily driver, pre-runner, race vehicle, half-track or Kugelwagen, or just about any other project you need help with. Their skilled staff with hundreds of years of combined experience eats, sleeps, and breathes performance. So go check them out at sdhqmotorsports.com or check them out on Insta at sdhqmotorsports. The We Happy Few 506 podcast is brought to you in partnership with the Gettysburg Museum of History, home of the Major Dick Winters collection and the largest assortment of authentic Band of Brothers artifacts in the world. Visit the free museum at 219 Baltimore Street in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, or at www.gettysburgmuseumofhistory.com, and on the YouTube channel, The History Underground, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
We few, we happy few, we band of brothers.
Well, hello, and welcome along to a special Easter Sunday edition of the We Happy Few 506 podcast. And we have back with us, friend of the show, Polymath and Biggio. How you doing, buddy?
What do you know? What do you say?
What do you know? What do you say? Well, I say that it's Easter. I say it's Easter Sunday, and my kids are jacked up on a lot of caffeine and sugar, egg-based caffeine and sugar, and they're in the bath next door. So I do apologize for the disturbance that is going to happen, and I can do nothing about.
Yeah, I think that disturbance is universal. I think the three boys, Nadine's three boys, I can hear them. They're 2 floors away. They're already thumping around and arguing and screaming. So it's going to be a long evening.
It is. You're going to love this, Andy. So Doug has managed to make it to very handsome silver fox, middle-aged, without having any kids, living, la vida loca. And then he's just decided to get 3 kids in one go. So his girlfriend has 3 kids. Yeah, exactly.
3 boys. 3 boys.
Yeah, exactly. God bless you, my friend. So he's gone from 0 to absolute battered hero.
Yeah.
On fell swoop. What do you make of that, Andy?
You gotta,
and they live
hire a day nanny and hire a night nanny. It's full on, Andy.
Go
to St. Bart's.
Yeah.
Have the babies being watched by the nannies and keep living that life. Yeah, they live in my building as well, so I got no escape from it. Absolutely, I've just begun from living, as Matt says, a free life to married with 3 sons, and it's kind of a bit nuts. But I know a few guys that did that, So yeah. How are they getting on? Are they still alive? Can you give me any? Because they lived so long in their ways, they throw money at the problem. Like I said, they just hire. I don't know how old the kids are, but they hire a nanny. They do this, and they still try to live that life, but just toss money at it, and that's good. It's. I'm sure those kids could need you. You know what I mean? So that's a good thing too. Everything happens for a reason. Yeah, that's what people tell me, and. I can.
A piece of art behind you, as if the frame's now empty. I'm trusting you've sold that
to. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Andy, should we start with the rifle too? Do you mind? Because we've had you on probably about 2 years ago now, and I didn't know you very well then. Now I now have the pleasure to hang out with you in Bastogne. I've hung out with you in Kentucky. I've hung out with you in Normandy. I got to know you, I think, pretty well. And I'm in awe of what it is that you do. But when we spoke before, we spoke about how the Rifle 2 was different to the Rifle 1 and how I need to pick my words here, but it has a more sort of darker feel in that you were focusing on guys that came home that struggled. How was that? How did your fan base, which is huge, by the way, respond to that? Did they embrace it? Did they figure out it was the next stage of the narrative that you were telling, or have you had some kickback, or how was that? How was the response to it?
Yeah. So to the fully loaded question.
Sorry, start with that.
Yeah, most people, 99% embraced it, loved it.
I've had a chip on my shoulder and a challenge when getting into the World War II realm in these last 5 years of writing, we'll say, because I've been helping veterans for 20 years. But um, being a new author, let's just say in 2021 about World War II, how was I going to make my product different? How was I going to make my book different than every other trillion books written on World War II? And that was to interject myself into this book. Coming home as an Iraq, Afghanistan veteran, and what the message from World War II veterans passed on to me to how to live a successful life after combat. So I did that with Rifle One, almost 70,000 copies sold. And a lot of that in Rifle One was those typical hero stories, kissing in Times Square, drinking milkshakes and dancing and V for victory and the typical World War II narrative. When I did Rifle 2, I got up to almost 500 different World War II veterans that I met. I said, okay, if people want a second book, I can't do the same thing again. Like, we all know what happens at the end. The Germans surrender, the atomic bombs get dropped, and, why not cover the veterans who came home and were not the greatest generation, so to speak, at first? And so, and don't get me wrong, there's stories in this that are guys that didn't come home and were total screw ups, but I did maybe 30% of the book, 40% of the book where they came home and they were part of that blanket generation that we just swept them under the rug. Like, oh, this guy didn't rob a bank. No, that didn't happen. No, this guy didn't join the mafia, or this guy didn't try to commit suicide, or this guy wasn't an alcoholic. And so I covered that in Rifle 2 with some guys who were totally honest with me in their late 90s of how they came home and made an attempt after Iwo Jima, come home, slice their own wrists. One guy came home and the only thing he knew how to do was do errands for the mob. Okay. Committed murder, got out of jail at 98 years old. Prison, did life in prison. Covered a couple of guys that were totally abusive alcoholics. Their kids didn't talk to them for years. And then, all these guys were able to turn their life around. And so I wanted to show younger veterans that these guys hit speed bumps on the way home. You may too. They were able to live a successful life into their hundreds, okay, their late 90s, and so can you, if that makes sense. And I think it was really received well. And yeah.
Was there many, obviously it was PTSD as we know what it is now, but there's so many, so basically there's a lot of similarities then from PTSD from World War II vets as there are from Afghanistan and Iraq vets. It's the same thing, right? It's the same. How many?
Yeah.
But there's obviously a huge time difference. So when you're talking to a World War II vet that's kind of sorted themselves out, I mean, how long did it take? Because obviously they had no help when they got back and no knowledge of, and PTSD didn't even exist. So we're talking decades, right? They could have been on the wrong path,
Absolutely. And some guys never made it off the path, right? So I was talking to some guys from the 442nd Regimental Combat Team. Those were the Japanese Americans who fought in Italy. And they saw enormous amounts of combat. They were the most highly decorated infantry regiment of all time. And I remember them saying, a few years after they got home, and maybe even 10 years after they got home, they were having a reunion in Los Angeles, and they saw one of their members homeless in the gutter drinking a bottle of alcohol, completely street homeless, a guy that was a highly decorated World War II veteran, fall down, piss your pants drunk is what he became. And then that guy vanished without a trace, right? The last time he was seen was in Skid Row, and no one ever knew what happened to him. There's no obituary. That happened to so many guys, but it was swept under the rug back then because it was very frowned upon to talk about the greatest generation, us winning World War II, and at what cost? What did the guys come home with as far as psychological issues, that they were a coward if they came home and had nightmares or couldn't deal with it? And everybody's born with a different way of absorbing stress. And I learned that in Rifle 1, interviewing some of these World War II veterans, because I'm also a police officer in my civilian job. So I see a lot of people I run into who are having some of the worst days of their life, and they tend to vent and what they blame their problems on. And I interviewed several World War II veterans who came home and became police officers. And my favorite question was to ask was, did you run into a lot of other veterans like you who are struggling and having PTSD? And their answer was yes. And everyone is built differently on how they handle that stress, what the human brain can take, how they filter it, how they deal with it. And then, there's that part, right? So there's biologically what you can take as a person. But then when that suitcase in your brain gets full, what resources are out there to unpack that suitcase and help you that wasn't available during World War II? And we always say, I always hear the children of World War II veterans always say, my parents never talked about it. My dad never talked about it. That was the greatest generation. They never talked about it. And they are totally, totally, totally not realizing how many guys came home and were alcoholics, right? Totally came home were domestic abusers, because back then there was no domestic violence laws or rules. If the police showed up to your house and you smacked your wife, it was like, oh, okay, nothing to see here. We're going to turn around and leave. And I know that because I interviewed police officers that were World War II veterans. And of course, suicide was so taboo. That was like, you didn't ever talk about that.
But has it been, because I was listening to another podcast about the quite frankly shocking numbers that have been bounded around for suicides from the Afghanistan-Iraq war. Shocking numbers. Is there
Right.
any record of numbers from World War II? I guess because I guess then you won't even know how to attribute it, would you? Because I mean, it's just kind of, it probably wasn't recorded then, right? As
Absolutely, positively not recorded. The thing with the numbers from Iraq and Afghanistan are totally skewed. And so basically, the records are veterans who commit suicide. So we've all seen that statistic: 22 veterans a day commit suicide, right? That is actually 80% non-combat veterans for some reason. So this is veterans in their 60s, 70s, 40s, and 50s, guys who wouldn't have had that window post 9/11. Obviously, Iraq, Afghanistan veterans have committed suicide, but we've seen a lot. And I used to work in veteran services before I became a police officer. And what was not told was some of those veterans, they just happened to be veterans who served in the 80s, in the early 90s. And they were actually the bulk of those 22 a day. So that's been skewed a little bit. Now we have a lot of nonprofits whose CEOs make six-figure salaries. So they're going to hammer that 22 a day veterans kill themselves, because they're taking donation money, they're getting grants, they're getting everything. So they don't want to give you an accurate number. They just want to tell you veterans are killing themselves. I don't think in the 40s and in the 50s they were keeping a record of what veterans committed suicide. You would have to literally pull death certificates to see self asphyxiation or something like that that they did. But
and it'll just end up probably being death by misadventure or something really vague, sort of an umbrella term that doesn't really cover. Yeah, that won't really sort of identify suicide as something specific that has been done. Do you know what I
you
mean?
could also you could also sweep so much under the rug back then with crime wise, alcoholism wise. Things weren't recorded, there was no footage, there was no videos, things of that nature. But if a lot of World War II veterans, many of them passed away in the early 90s and the late 80s, and they weren't that old. I mean, the guys were, that could be for a lot of different reasons, but it's how they handled stress. It's the cigarettes they got in their MREs or their, K rashes that they're smoking every day their whole lives. And I wanted to hit that topic in this book, and I did that. And I even said, why not have a German veteran write the foreword? And I had a German veteran write the foreword of this book too, to see his perspective of things.
Yeah, great.
And to go on that topic, I served in Iraq and Afghanistan. Wouldn't change a thing about it. Loved it. When September 11th happened, that to me in my generation, I'm 37. We were all in high school, and we said, "Oh, this is our Pearl Harbor. This is it. This is going to be a just war. This is going to be a," and we believed everything our government told us, and we full steam ahead. We would go to the gates of hell for the United States for those kids who enlisted in that era. And it turns out a lot of stuff was lied, a lot of stuff was extended for the purposes of military contract companies and 20-year wars. And so I said, oh, if I was lied to, or if I was misconceived about things, what the hell were these German veterans thinking with even less technology back then? They would just read a newspaper and, okay, I'm going to join the German army. I'm going to do this. So I did want to tell their part of the story, that not all Germans were bad. They had to do what they had to do. And that was that, and I could see how they fell into it.
Yeah. Their post-war PTSD must have been a whole different level when you consider the added guilt. Well, there's a loss for a start. Things of loss because they lost the war, but then also when the realization of exactly what the regime was about comes to the fore as well. And then, they come up questioning, what was this about? Do you know what I mean? It must be a whole different level. I mean, I'm not.
What are you talking about? World War II, man.
Yeah, German veterans after World War II who went back.
Yeah. But but the other side of that coin is that as we know, as Andy's just saying, that was World War II was a just war. I mean, Hitler was such an obvious baddie, and his regime was so obviously bad. I mean, is there been a struggle from contemporary veterans of Afghanistan and Iraq about dealing with that issue? About, hang on, like you just said, the whole thing, the WMD thing, never found, blah blah blah. President declares victory, and yet it goes on for another 5 years. Like, what's is there?
Yeah, so I can speak from myself, and I, as a U.S. Marine, right? I didn't join the Marines to hug people. Okay, I wanted to go. I was an 18-year-old kid who wanted to shoot rockets, blow shit up, and USA, and we were attacked, and let's do this. I get to do what my grandfathers did. So I absolutely struggle with that. I absolutely do. I'm not to struggle to the point where I'm laying down in the fetal position and feel sorry for myself. I got to get up every day, take care of my kids, serve my community, and move on. But a lot of my buddies won't even talk about it, won't admit it. They want to say, "Oh, I don't give a shit about Afghanistan. I don't give a," and I think they're bullshit lying. I think a lot of guys don't want to talk about it, but yeah, I absolutely struggle with that. I think about when I go to, Osama bin Laden was definitely a bad guy. Al Qaeda were bad people. They orchestrated an attack, and so, to see the ending of that and how we ended that, a kick in the stomach, a kick in the gut. And that's why I'm actually, the last 3 years, I've been helping a lot of those Marines wounded at the Kabul airport who were not even 21 years old yet. And they were sent into that mess and were blown up by a suicide bomber. And I've been helping them. And actually, Matt's coming to the United States next month to assist with that. But
could you explain to us what that is? So this is a particular night that you're putting on in Boston. Could you just tell the listeners what actually happened? What this group of people? So it Kabul airport or Basram or something like that when it was the last evac, and yeah, will you tell the story, Andy?
Yeah. So after 20 something years of us being in Afghanistan, I was there in 2011. I saw so many Afghan police, Afghan army by the thousands of thousands. And it appeared to me they had their government up and running. Obviously, I'm just a corporal of Marines. I'm an E4 rank. All right. What do I know? I'm assuming we got our 3-letter agencies, CIA, and all these other places understand what's going on, and we're getting ready to pull out of Afghanistan. But the official date was 2022, I believe. We officially closed up shop in Afghanistan, and it turned to hell in a handbasket. It sounded like the Afghan police and the Afghan army weren't paid for almost 6 months. The Taliban made a huge push, And suddenly there was no one defending Afghanistan, and the last stronghold was that Kabul airport. And everyone who ever helped a coalition force in the last 20 years was trying to leave Afghanistan from this airport. Can you imagine knowing that the Taliban are pickup trucks with machine guns as far as the eye can see on a highway heading into Kabul? And now everyone that ever translators, Afghan special forces, U.S. personnel, people who just did simple stitching for uniforms for everyone trying to get the hell out of Afghanistan. All right. And they take a group of kids who are training in Jordan, okay, 2nd Battalion, 1st Marines, and say, oh, hey, guys, training's over. You're going to protect hundreds of thousands of Afghans to try to get evacuated. Oh, in our equipment and personnel. And yeah, just get out there and do crowd control with thousands of Afghans who you don't even know who's who. And by the way, the Taliban are actually operating a checkpoint just down the road here. You're going to be kind of like cooperating with them to do the evacuation. We were just killing each other a year or two ago and blowing each other up, but now we're going to cooperate. Like holy cannoli. And
sketchy as hell. Yeah.
Sure enough, as the story goes, an ISIS K was a group growing in Afghanistan. Supposedly got into that evacuation checkpoint known as Abbey Gate. The Abbey Gate was a gate that belonged to the airport. Got in there with a suitcase full of explosives and killed about 100 Afghan civilians, killed 13 U.S. service members, and wounded about twice as much. These are kids who were like 20, 21 years old, missing limbs, paralyzed. Can you even imagine the scene of getting up after that explosion and looking to your left and right of you? People can Google the photos of that. I was watching it live from my police station at the front desk of my police station, and that was really tough. That was really tough. Having been there in 2011 and then seeing 10 years later how it ended was extremely rough. And I said to myself, I'm going to reach out to those kids and help them when they got home. And of course they took a lot of rehab in the hospital first. So we are doing an event called the Boston's Wounded Vet Ride, which is a motorcycle rally I've been doing for 15 years for different wounded veterans of the conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan. But this year it's dedicated to a couple of those service members who are wounded in Afghanistan.
Are they going to be there? They are.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Amazing.
And I've teamed up with several actors of the awesome show Band of Brothers, because we also have about 15 World War II veterans who are going to be attending, and there's going to be a few thousand motorcyclists, and it's going to be an all-around patriotic event and an educational event. So,
yeah. What I love about you, Andy, I love the fact that you are a dyed-in-the-wool patriot, a real American patriot, but you are not binary. You are. There is a lot of nuance to how you feel about things, and I think people like you need to be doing the educating because it's not simple. Do you know what I mean? You have done what you as an impassioned young man because you saw 9/11. This is my Pearl Harbor. I'll go out there, and you have seen stories, and your reaction to it is so nuanced. You don't believe the stuff that you're told. You challenge everything. There needs to be more people like you, particularly at the moment where everything is supposedly black and white and polarized. And we do need to be able to talk in this adult manner in which you bring up things that are dark or whatnot. You know what I mean? I think it's an incredible. When you asked me to help you, I was just like, yeah, yes, mate, absolutely, 100%. I totally believe in what it is that you do. It really is really cool. Don't mind me asking. You can just not.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, mate. Honestly, it's just from the heart. If you don't mind me asking this question, you don't have to, but I feel like you might be open to it, and this is another way that you could educate us here. Is that when we talk about veterans with PTSD, and we talk about veterans that go off the rails, and we talk about veterans that end up committing suicide and all these tragedies that happen. In your opinion, what is it that causes that when they go off the rails? Is it a paranoia? Is it
easy?
Is it what that we can in our lives so we can understand what they're going through?
It is absolutely 1,000, almost 1,000% connected to substance abuse. If you have an issue, whether it's anxiety, depression, anger, paranoia, and you add alcohol or you add drugs to that, it is a recipe. It's a kiss of death. It is an absolute kiss of death. And I've had friends that have taken their own life. And everything consistent with that is, what were they doing the night before? Drinking until the sun came up. What were they doing? Buying a bag of heroin. It's eating pills. Um, the guys that are battling mental health and substance abuse do not go hand in hand. It's death. It equals death. There's no escaping it. One, you have to give up one or the other. You know what I mean? You have to obviously you have to give up the drugs, because the mental illness doesn't just, that takes
But you
forever.
need help to do that, right? So you
Correct.
need some kind of
Mhm.
therapy. You need some kind of
Mhm.
association. So this would lead us on nicely to sort of, so the VA, that must have changed a lot since World War II, guys, I guess, if it was even around then. I don't know how long the VA's been around, but what kind of help, for example, did your generation receive from the VA when you got back from your deployment?
Yeah, my first tour in Iraq, I can't remember too good, but when I remember getting back from Afghanistan, it was like we got off the plane, and the first thing they did was march us into a hangar and made everyone sign up for the VA hospital. It was like the first day, and the first thing they did was off the plane into the hangar, sit down, fill this out. You were enrolled in the VA hospital. They were on top of us. It got a lot better during my 6 years in the Marines, that I noticed that. And then they have, family days and mandatory educational days where you sit there and you take classes, and you meet clinicians and you meet this, and then you come back to. I came back to Boston. We have 2 VA hospitals. We have a combat veterans center. We have veterans court. Um, and we have all sorts of nonprofits picking up the slack where the government doesn't. So it's tenfold compared to what it ever used to be. In the VA back in the 40s, in the 50s, did have a PTSD clinic, or they called it combat fatigue, I think, back then. And but of course, it wasn't anything like compared to the resources they have today, including with the first resources, just admitting you have it and talking about it. It is still very hard, even for me, being on this podcast talking about it, that when I'm really feeling a certain way, it is very hard for me to talk about it. I gotta call a particular veteran I know and talk to him about some things. So
Because like I say, like you mentioned that suicide rate number. I mean, I've heard like suicides have gone over 60,000 or something like that. It's crazy the numbers in total, but it's kind of, do you feel the VA are doing enough? Do you feel that for a modern veteran, there are the resources there to kind of help you through it? Or do you think, and here's an idea, do you feel that the help that was on offer for returning veterans returning from a deployment, especially a frontline deployment, that perhaps some of the things that are offered to them when they return should actually be in their preliminary training, like be part of their boot camp. Like they should have that. You're going to do all the physical stuff. You're going to do all the tactical stuff. You're going to do, all of the, intelligence stuff, all the stuff you trainers in the. I don't know how long takes to train a Marine, a year and a half or something. I'm not sure, but surely would it help if there was like a module on what you're going to deal with when you come home, so that they know it before they go, kind of thing. Do you think that would be a good idea, or do you think that, or do you think, oh, does
Doug,
any?
we still have to breed killers, Doug. You understand? We still have to breed the bayonet. All right.
Yeah, no one
Uh,
would go, would they?
yeah.
Well, how
Uh,
about I just talk to the guy?
yeah. No, I absolutely agree with that, and they might even do that now. I mean, I'm going on almost 20 years now since I was in the military. Went in the military. So they, I think that's a great idea. I think it's perfect, but they might even do something a little bit like that, or after basic training or boot camp. And but I think it's good. I think it's good to get ahead of it. I think perhaps even if I even sit down and thought about it, maybe I even got ahead of it. I don't know, but I think also getting educated, using my education that the VA and excuse me, the VA, but the military helped pay for, my family helped pay for, helped me a lot. Keep a seeing both sides of the coin and things like that. So,
Yeah. And obviously writing was a great cathartic experience for yourself, right? You know.
yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. Do you also think? Sorry, I don't want to get too sucked down this rabbit hole because we've got other things to talk about. But do you also think perhaps that the veterans that come back have been coming back in the last few years? Life moves at such a faster pace than it used to. The guys that came back in the 40s went back to their farm, went back to like a simple life, and now you're going back into this mad carousel that is life now with social media and this and that.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh
Is
yeah, big time. I mean, it took you 30 days just to get home from Europe back then on a boat.
right, exactly. With the same vet, so there's plenty of time to so
Uh-huh. Now we fly home, we're home, and or
yeah,
you're FaceTiming your family from over there, and it's like, which I didn't do because I still didn't even have those capabilities by the time I got out. But social media is brutal. I mean, it is. It's awesome because hell, I wouldn't have met you guys if it wasn't for social media. But it is tough. It's tough. It's brutal. I mean, I could go on my phone right now and watch a drone fly into a Russian trench and kill five people just like that, and that happened last week or something, or a day ago, or yesterday. And it's I think those trigger a lot of things. I think that's moving so fast, and um, I'm teaching my kid to ride a bicycle today, and watching footage on my phone of Ukrainians getting killed or Gaza
Yeah.
and Israel, and it's like it's brutal.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff was able to get tucked away back in the 40s and 50s, and some guys never even went to reunions. And none of
Yeah,
that.
that would have been their only trigger then, wouldn't it? Because it was TV was just been invented a few years. Like no one had a television until the 50s anyway, the mid 50s.
Right.
Everyone had a radio. It's quite simple to switch the off switch. You had your newspaper, and that's kind of it, isn't it? And then
Exactly.
so I guess it would have been much easier to sort of you know avoid certain things, but also again then much easier to isolate as well. And there's a moment, solitude is great, but when it turns into isolation, that's when it becomes bad, doesn't it? Especially
Mhm.
someone that's suffering from trauma, I'd imagine. So yeah, interesting. So that was the basis of the rifle too, then, just following the journeys of these guys. Is there any particular story that really stood out for you, something you still think about now whilst researching and writing that book?
There was a lot. I think if we're gonna stay on this topic of carnage and how to deal with the carnage, I think about this Marine named Emilio Maglacane, um, and he was with the First Marine Division on Peleliu and Okinawa, and it was like night and day talking to him compared to talking to a veteran who served in Europe.
yeah,
And for him to be able to come home and raise three kids, grandkids, and never once use his war as an excuse to cross the line with his family, be abusive, be an alcoholic, none of that. And even to be able to sit down and say, if I got a chance to meet a Japanese soldier today, I think I would extend my hand and say, nice to meet you, and I'm sorry, and you were just doing your job, which is like almost something you never hear
Mm.
Pacific veterans say a lot, compared to the European vets. A lot of Pacific veterans I met still were very bitter about that, avoided going to the reunion at Saipan because they found out the Japanese were invited.
Wow.
Um, of course, then you have the guys who still had human remains from teeth and skulls and things like that. And it was a really, 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 really macabre theater. And I heard it from him. He was with Able Company 1-5 on Peleliu and Okinawa, and wounded on Okinawa. And yeah, so I think that stands out to me. And if he can live his whole life without hanging on what he saw man do to other man there, then I can also do the same, and other veterans can too.
That's an incredible awareness he had. Isn't it?
Yeah.
To understand that any behavior that he had in his life was related to the trauma, but to kind of identify that and go, actually, no, I'm not going to let this happen. I'm not going to go down that road. He must have seen lots of his friends go down that road then, perhaps, or similar.
Yeah. I mean, one of the, I'm not going to mention names, but one of the first veterans I ever brought to Normandy, his son pulled me aside and he said, "Hey, mind you, this guy is like 98 and his son's 80." His son's 80. And he goes, "I just want to say to you, thank you for bringing me and my dad here. I never knew what my dad went through, and I didn't talk to my dad for 11 years." He said because he was a vicious alcoholic. He beat me, my mother. He threw our couch out the second story window onto the street one night. Came home, he was so angry and drunk. And I didn't talk to him for 11 years. And but being here, seeing what he went through, and not that it was an excuse, but it opened up it took this guy, the son, until he was 80 to get maybe a grasp of what his dad went through. And now his dad went sober, cold turkey sober, changed his life at some point. I forget how old he was, probably in his like 40s maybe. And and that's when I saw the other coin of how some of these World War II veterans could have been after going what they went through. And then hearing Emilio's story, I would have thought Emilio had every reason to grab an Uzi and climb a clock tower. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. So,
yeah.
Should we talk a little bit about your last tour, your varsity tour?
Yeah. So I just got back from Germany maybe 3 weeks ago. And it was very unique. I took a 101-year-old veteran back to his former. It is a beautiful other story, right? This guy didn't make the book because I had just met him about a year ago. Prisoner for 15 months under German captivity in Stalag Luft 4. Okay. Beaten, put on a death march for 800 miles across Germany. Shot, ball turret gunner shot down. Watched people who couldn't keep up in the forced march dragged off into the woods, and hearing a pop noise and watching the Germans come back without that particular prisoner. His name was Lester Shrink, and he's 101 years old, and he was the 8th Air Force ball turret gunner, and I brought him back to Stalag Luft 4 in Poland. The people who upkeep Stalag Luft 4 and the monuments there said they had not seen a survivor from this camp return in years. So this was such an epic trip for me, a notch in my belt in the history world as far as I'm concerned on achievements. And he's probably going to be the last veteran to ever go back to Stalag Luft 4 in Poland. Then we trekked across Germany and attended the 80th anniversary of Operation Varsity, where the 17th Airborne jumped across the Rhine. And just to show you where we are as far as World War II history, there was not one veteran or a survivor from Operation Varsity there. Wow. We're finally at that stage.
Yeah. Wow, they're all gone.
Yeah.
And that sort of leads me on to my next question, and that is that you kind of winding down, taking people back there? Are you done now? Was that your last tour?
I have zero plans to go to the 81st anniversary of D-Day. I have zero plans. What else? There's plenty of reasons for that. A, it is very risky bringing veterans that age over 100 over to Europe. Two, I don't want to keep doing it just to do it. It's the 80th for me of all of that was a good milestone to try to slow this down for me, for Biggio. Other groups are bringing veterans over, and that's awesome. That's fine. And as long as we keep this memory of these guys and their sacrifice in World War II alive, that's cool. But it won't be Andrew Biggio's mission to do that, So
Yeah, and I totally understand where you're coming from with that, because there is a point at which bringing somebody over is just not a good idea. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
You're so old, you're frail. It's
Mm.
don't deserve to come over and be lauded because you do. But like getting somebody who's confused and old and could, who knows if they're going to make the trip. It's just not right.
Lester was 101 years old and didn't use a wheelchair our entire trip. Okay, he was
He
a
looked, he looked.
freak of nature.
I watched the videos, mate. He looks 72, and he's really articulate too.
So if the moons align, right? I have a veteran who's super, super healthy, approved by his doctor, has not returned ever once to Europe or Normandy or whatever. And then I can actually retrace his footsteps into a town or a foxhole or a village, then to me it's all systems go. But if I'm just going to take a veteran who's damn near not ambulatory and just drag him to Europe for the sake of dragging him to Europe, it's just not what I'm going to do. So
no, I totally understand. I totally get it. Like, yeah. There's a point at which, okay, that's fine, but it's getting someone who's going to be confused and get all this, people all over them, and they don't quite know what's going on. And
what I think we should do, Matt, you ever see the movie Bad Grandpa? We should really just dress one of us up with all the makeup, the bodysuit, everything. And just like, we found an 82nd Airborne veteran who was flying into the radar this whole time.
Yeah, and we're going to throw
just,
him out of a DC-10 as well.
Yeah, film the whole thing, and then on the last day in the middle of St. Mary Glees, just rip the mask off. We pranked all of Normandy. You know what I mean? Like,
what does that mean for your work going forward then? So have you got another book planned? Are you going to move on to sort of more other conflicts, or what's the
as you hinted
mission for Andy?
Yeah, Andy, you hinted last time that things were pointing you towards Vietnam.
I'm about 3 chapters into a Vietnam book.
Ooh,
yep. My reader base is pushing for Vietnam. There is a spike in interest for Vietnam veterans, according to my reader base and social media following. And then a huge thing, and this is how the book starts, is I come home one day, there's a box on my front porch, and it's an M16, a 1965 Colt M16 rifle, service rifle. And in a note, it said, "Please don't stop doing what you're doing. Continue with the Vietnam veterans."
Wow.
And yeah.
Do you know who it came from? Do you know who it came from?
Yeah, it's a $7,000 gun. Okay. And it came from a gentleman by the name of Tommy in Pittsburgh, and Tommy Langston, and his great uncle was also killed in World War II. And so he saw that my great uncle, who I'm named after, Andrew Biggio, he's named after his great uncle who was killed in World War II, and said, "I'm going to do this," and sent me that gun to keep doing this. And he goes, "If you need a Humvee when you do the Iraq and Afghanistan veterans, we'll get you a Humvee." I'm like, let's pump the brakes. Okay.
Am I right in thinking that right about now is the anniversary of the 50th anniversary of the fall of Saigon? Am I close to that?
I what was that, 75? I'm not. Yeah. So
it's got to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, mind you, I haven't even conducted any real interviews with my Vietnam vets yet. So my Vietnam history is rusty. But I became a better historian the more I talked to the World War II veterans, corroborated their stories, what I could do research on, and became more profound in the history of World War II. And I know that's going to happen with Vietnam as well.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. I'm interested to see which sort of line you're going to take with it, Andy. How many sort of Vietnamese veterans that you can speak to as well, and get a really round, because it is a very tricky topic even to this day. I mean, I thought Ken Burns' documentary was brilliant, but I've said it to people who were Vietnam vets, and they've like stuffed it down my throat and said no, it isn't.
Same.
I thought it was balanced, but I wasn't there.
Me
So
too.
you know,
Me too. Same thing. Talked to the Vietnam vets in my town. They were like, they eye rolled when I mentioned it. I thought it was good. It did lean a little to the hippie protest side, not too much, just a little. Yeah, so I don't think my conservative Vietnam buddies liked it too much, but I thought it was good. And by the way, this segment is brought to you by the Gettysburg Museum of History. Sorry, I was paid 75 cents to do this. Gettysburg Museum of History.
Boston.
Just kidding. Hi, Eric, if you watch this.
Is he coming? Is he coming to Boston, Eric?
He is, yeah.
He is. Great. Oh, good. Because I'll be seeing him the weekend before, and yeah, the great agent provocateur, the lightning rod of people's distaste, Eric Dorr. I don't know why people don't. He's an awesome dude, man.
Oh yeah, I haven't. I just like teasing him on this. I have not got any negative feedback. But he's awesome. He's really I think he has slowly gone from collector, historian to tenfold stepping up for veterans, helping sponsor my trips, wanting to meet younger veterans on how to help and tours in his museum and stuff like that. And that's what kind of makes you well-rounded in our world is don't just talk about it, be about it. And that's what he's done absolutely with our friendship. So,
yeah. Instead, so we did a tour together. So we did an Easy Company tour. So we did, All Born to the Eagle's Nest. And we went to the Dead Man's Corner Museum where they have that wall where they have all the veterans' bricks in there. And he just sort of took me to one side and said, we're going to do just a little bit of an opening ceremony. And he'd bought the plaque for Floyd Talbot on it. And he'd put, donated by Matthew Leach. That's it. I had nothing to do with it. He paid for it, sorted out the whole thing. And he wanted no praise for it whatsoever.
Yes. But we're still going to make fun of him, Matt.
I was like,
he's not getting off that easy. We're still going to torture him, make fun of him.
Torture him. I'm going to cut his ponytail off and wear it as a beard as well. I love him, but he's a great figure of fun. Did you notice on the WhatsApp group that I sent you for the Boston guys that I'd called you Andy Biglio?
No, but I love that. I love that. So I also wanted to do like for Halloween the 3 stages of Eric Dorr. So you have black rubber gloves Eric Dorr, where he's holding an item from the museum. You have restaurant Eric Dorr, where it's like he's eating the seafood salad and wearing the So I think next Halloween I'm going to do like 3 images on Facebook of.
Do it. We should do it. Me, you, and I don't know, JD Hewitt or someone should be the 3 Eric Dorrs.
Yeah. Definitely. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, buddy. Well, listen, we've had you on for long enough and you've been absolutely incredible as usual. I can't wait to see you again, man.
Well, we didn't even mention we're doing the Q&A actually. So yeah, the day before this big wounded vet motorcycle ride in Boston, I think we have almost 7 of the guys from the show, Band of Brothers, coming. It's something. After 15 years of doing this motorcycle rally, I had to say to myself, how can I make this weekend different than every other year and not the same old, same old? And I said, you and I have gotten closer over the last couple of years and overseas too. And I said, you know what, well, let's bring some of the actors. Let's do a Q&A the night before the Wounded Vet ride. We've already raised $15,000 selling tickets, Yeah. And I think we'll definitely by next month we'll be up to $25,000 raised for these guys. So, and we have 15 World War II veterans coming. This is May 17th in Boston at Encore Casino. It's gonna be good. It's gonna be awesome. So I'm looking forward to it. And then the day after that is the motorcycle ride. So. And you're riding on my bike, but you're going to face the other way. Let's not get it twisted, mate.
I just want to be Lucky Pierre between you and Eric, to be honest with you.
You're my tail gunner, okay, on the motorcycle. So
anytime, buddy. Well, listen, fella, thanks so much for coming on, man. I'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Ciao, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Take care, mate. I wish you well.
Thank you so much, mate.
Wow.
It's always a pleasure to have Andy
It
Biggio.
is lovely to see him again after all this time. I haven't seen him since the last one. So yeah, it's really, really good. Yeah. Yeah.
And
You're
if,
gonna have a
oh,
ball out there in Boston, man. Have a
I know
great time.
Michael Cudlitz, Jimmy Madio, Rick Warden, Nick Aaron, and that wretched Mark Lawrence.
What? Gonna be so, yeah, you're gonna have a ball with that lot.
Yeah,
Fantastic. Come back with plenty of stories. Yeah.
it's a lot of fun. I'm sure everybody who was going to come and listen to this has bought their tickets. But if not, have a go over onto Andy Biggio's socials, and he's got a whole bunch of stuff on there. You just click on it and come along because it will be great. And I've done stuff with all those band guys before, sort of like Q&As and panels. They're all really good, really good. You can ask anything. So erudite and good. Jimmy's brilliant at it. So I'm looking forward to it. All right, Dougie, I better pop off. I've got to go buy a curry.
Yeah. All right, guys.
All right,
Thanks for listening, everyone. It's good to see you, Matt. And
yeah,
yeah, I'll see you next week. Thanks.
listening. Thanks, guys.